All right, I'm here with Jarrod Snow, the snowman, and yeah, man, I've just been so impressed with this guy coming out to Hawaii and having some big results. Honestly, I think Jared spent most of his time on Maui. Is that correct when you came out?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Time, yeah. And then even in France, it's when we're all travelers and foreigners, we're kind of all staying, by ourselves but we cross paths a bunch of times. But I could just get this sense that Jared is like one of the coolest guys there, for sure. Australians always have great attitudes and great spirits, and they're always fun to hang out with and be around. Um, and I was just like, bro, I gotta do a chat with this guy, a podcast, because he's so cool. And I remember last year, Perth, Perth stayed with me on Oahu for a bit before all the big races, and I was like, bro, who's this Jarrod Snow guy? He's killing it in Hawaii. And like, I think the first race was the Imua, and then yeah, Imua. I was like, whoa, like, bro, this guy Jarrod killed it. And then for a lot of us in Hawaii, we know that like having a good result in the Maliko race is super tough because it's like a full-on Mario Kart, just sprint, just and everybody goes. So it's gnarly. And then when you backed it up with your M2M, bruh, I was tripping like, bruh, who is this guy? You know? Um, because I think I've followed you or I've seen your stuff before, and for most of us, we all just thought you were just ripper on the sup guy. But cranking turns on the downwind runs and getting some sick shots. Killer tag team with your brother, by the way. He's an insane and talented photographer and videographer. But yeah, man. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself? You know, give us your story. This is actually, honestly, genuinely my first real conversation with you, other than us stumbling into each other, after Saint Tropez and just like, yeah, you legend, But tell us about yourself and how you got into foiling and where you're from and what your journey's been like. Stoked to
Yeah,
hear it.
sick. And I appreciate that too, man. Really. It's sick watching you guys too all the way in Hawaii, and all the stuff that you guys do is sick. So it's inspiring for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm from Australia, down in Victoria, so everyone's probably heard of Bells Beach. It's probably the closest
Yeah.
yeah, it's the closest spot to where I live. I started foiling like quite a long time ago, actually. Like probably my dad got us set up.
Wait.
Uh,
Before you go on, I want to hear this. But a big shout out to Jeff Rowley. He's kind of been
yeah,
one of my favorite guys that I used to watch from the early days, and I always tip my hats off to guys who are, get into foiling, um, in a very isolated place and by themselves and build their own boards. And I'm sure you're gonna get into it too, but you build your
yeah,
own boards. But I've always been a big fan of Jeff, from since the early days, and I hope he's still out there crushing it in that area.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Jeff, like, he paved the way down here. Like, he was undeniably the first guy downwinding here for sure. Like, building his own equipment, and like, he was kind of ahead of the curve building like the longer boards too.
Yeah.
And like no one else really had an interest in it. Like the foils, like everyone would know, were kind of a little bit behind, and it was very hard to downwind back then.
Hmm.
So, Jeff was kind of pushing that envelope, doing it on the bad foils with the big boards and everything. And then once the foils kind of evolved, we came back in and then started in the downwind scene.
Hmm.
But I started foiling like a long time ago. Actually on like homemade equipment. Like Dad just used to make like these random foils out of really, sketchy looking stuff, and would go toe foil a couple of the reefs, and like, just it was just like this crazy evolution from kite surfing, and then, toe foiling, and then prone foiling, and then the sup came along, and then yeah, now downwind's taken a hold of everyone. So
So So growing up where you're from, it sounds like Bells Beach and the whole zone and the whole area
Yeah.
has amazing surf. So I'm imagining that you grew up a surfer, or it sounds like you said you mentioned kite surfing.
Yeah, so I grew up like surfing a lot. Like the sup was also a big thing for us, and then kiting was massive. So we have a lot of right hand points, and kite surfing down here is really, really good for it. And I think that lends itself to like, when you're like a sole surfer, it's quite hard to get into these other disciplines. But once you've like dabbled in kiting and supping and stuff, it's quite easy to go, oh, what's foiling? Like, let's learn it
Yeah,
and, progress in that way. So I was kind of lucky to have these other experiences to, ease my way into foiling.
yeah,
So that was pretty cool.
yeah. Surfing is still pretty core here in Hawaii, but for us, we realize and we notice that anybody who's getting into foiling and who can foil well, they're gonna
Mm.
be your like top waterman. And it sounds like for you, dang man, you did it all. Like at least for us, like you know, we don't really mix too much between the surf and the board sports, and then like the kite surf stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
either you grow up as a windsurfer, wind category person, or you grow up in the lineup in the surf. So,
Sure.
dude, I didn't know that about you. That's pretty epic. And
Yeah.
it's exciting to see with foiling too, because now with parawinging and winging and all these other things, like you can go in any that direction and shred and have fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And was your background foiling, surfing, or?
No, actually, for me, my background, I mean, I grew up as a surfer. Growing up in
Yeah.
Hawaii, it's pretty natural that we're gonna go play around in the shorelines and get
Yeah.
into boogie boarding and then surfing with our friends. But
Yeah.
actually, my introduction to downwinding was canoe paddling,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, so canoe paddling was my father was a big canoe paddler, so I would go on downwind runs with him, and I started as early as in like probably ninth or 10th grade. I would go with my dad on a Hawaii kite run,
Wow.
and yeah, I would paddle downwind, and for me in the beginning it was so frustrating because I would go with all these 50-year-old people. And even like my first time, I'm 15, 16 years old, like big, strong, and I went out and their slowest person of the group happened to be like this lady in her 50s. They're all retired group, and I was just hammering my heart away, like trying to go downwind, and
Yeah.
she was like effortlessly gliding, surfing bumps past me or ahead
Yeah.
of me. And I was so frustrated, and that was kind of my introduction to it. And then years went by, and I love canoe paddling and downwinding.
Yeah.
And so when foiling came along for me, I was just having these flashbacks of like, dude, I've been out there downwinding when the surf and the bumps are like breaking in the middle of the ocean. If we
Yeah.
can ride these unbroken swells on foils, like like these unbroken waves to the beach, for sure we can ride swells when it's ripping winds.
Yeah.
And so for me, downwind foiling has been the perfect blend of basically my life's passions of surfing and downwinding. And
Wow.
it's cool, and I look back at it now and I love that downwinding is just opening up and it's more accessible to a lot of people, right? And that's just how it is. Surfers have always stayed near shore, and then canoe paddlers have always gone offshore. And
Yeah.
then, now it's cool because, I've had conversations with, like lifelong surfers or professional surfers, and they trip out being way out at sea
Mhm.
and downwinding.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's
So,
sick.
so what's it like downwinding in your zone, in your area? Or
It's really good. What's that?
how did you get into downwinding? Or
Um,
what was that
it's
like for you?
funny. Like I was kind of getting into downwinding like really hesitantly. Like I was kind of resistant to it. I kind of was like just got into winging and was kind of like No, I think I'm just gonna stick to the winging thing. Like I really like this, and I don't really want to see myself doing downwind. And then like I went on a trip up to Queensland, and all the guys there had stopped winging. All they were doing was just going downwind, and I was just like, man, maybe there's something to it. I might try, and I just tried on the wing, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm missing out so bad. Like as soon as I get home, I got to figure this thing out. So yeah, got home, built my first stand up board, and yeah, I just tried to learn it, and man, never really turned back since. It's just been epic.
So,
But
so before you
yeah.
started building SUP boards, were you building your own foil boards and wing boards and all that?
Totally, yeah. So I grew up making my own surfboards when I was young, like probably about 16, and then, grew up making kite boards, foil boards, anything in between. And yeah, making something that you actually go out and use has been like a really, really good hobby because like you get to fine tune it to your own skill and weight and then the waves that you surf, and you learn so much more about the actual craft that you're doing, not
Yeah,
just about, buying a board and then just go, oh, this sucks or it's good or whatever. But
yeah,
building it's been really epic.
yeah. You're like a little bit more invested
Yeah.
in pursuing what works and kind of chasing that performance. And that's why, for me, like I said, the guys like Dave Kalama and all these guys who are downwinders, and then they also shape boards. They just have
Yeah.
a deeper understanding and connection to creating these downwind designs and shapes.
Yeah.
um,
And I think, yeah, like your brain doesn't turn off. Like when you get off the water, like you kind of off the water thinking about that run and like how that board could have been better or how you could have done something different. Or I like, it's fun. Like I like that challenge of making something that really works in the ocean.
yeah.
So that's
So
just the
how
life.
many for you, how many designs or trial and errors did you go through before you got to where you're board now? And by the
Um,
way, like Jared's boards actually look sick. If you're in Australia, you know, get his board. Like it's. I mean, this is not a plug. Like I would I generally or genuinely observe like, wow, his board actually looks pretty good. Like it's looks like it has the right amount of liters, has a nice outline and shape, and he's killing it. He killed it in
it
San Tropez with the flat water race and stuff, and but yeah,
is.
what was that process like for you building your board?
No. Yeah, so building the board's really fun, and like there's been some really, really bad ones. Like we've made some boards back, when everyone was making the wide and short ones that just did not work at all. And there's been some really terrible ones, but to put a number on it, like I design a lot on the computer, and
Mhm.
sometimes I'll design up to like 30 or 40 versions of one shape and not like it. Like it just
Yeah,
won't work.
yeah,
And then sometimes I'll like do one or two designs and it will work epic. Like sometimes you just get lucky like that. And sometimes it's just like, oh, I don't know if it's gonna work. It doesn't really look right. And then I'll try it and I'll be like, oh wow, that works really well. And like keep picking up all these little like kind of like snowballs along. You pick up all these little bits of, oh, that kind of worked for this. Maybe it'll work for this kind of design. And it
right,
starts to get easier and easier to design better shapes, I think.
yeah,
Well, it
yeah.
seems to be anyway.
So, I haven't. I've been dabbling a little bit. I don't have. I'm not a super technical person where, I see something, hopefully it works. My
Yeah.
understanding is growing. But if you had to name off, you know, three, four, five things, like a list of things that's important to you and a success of your board, whether it's like length, liters, foil distribution, rocker, like what are some of the things that you look for when you're making a good downwind board?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's like so many aspects to a good board. And like you can have everything right and then have one thing that's really wrong and it will displace all those good things that were right.
Yeah,
So it's hard to say like one thing's like super important to nail. It's you kind of got to get the whole thing right.
yeah,
But like if you have a bad rocker, I think that's probably one of the worst things. And then like aesthetically, I feel like if boards look really good, they typically work really good too. So if they don't look good in the first place, it's not a good start.
Right. Well, okay. Well, um, a rebuttal for that.
Oh yeah?
A rebuttal for that. What about the gator?
I like so first when I saw that, I was like, "Whoa, that is really weird looking." But the
Wait,
more that like you get used to the look and more that you kind of like, see it on the beach and people using it, like I've actually kind of grown to love the look of it, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, me too. But yeah, it's been crazy because it's been nothing that we've ever seen resemble a
Totally.
surfboard at all.
Yeah.
And hats off to Dave with all these crazy ideas. I love when people get inspired with design from nature.
Yeah.
Uh, even early on, like with foils, I think that was like a big selling point with like the Takuma Kujiras.
Yeah.
Is like, I mean, it could have been full marketing, but they were like had this whole like
Yeah.
sophisticated video about the whales, ridges. You're like, whoa, like nature.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but it was actually a good foil.
Yeah. And same with
For
like Dave's, like that story that he put behind it too, like without hearing like kind of the backstory of that board, like I kind of was like, I don't get it, like it doesn't really make sense. But then hearing it and then visualizing why it works good, I can see it and I reckon it's sick.
yeah, yeah.
So sick.
I think what's also like interesting about board making is it can do everything on the water perfectly. Like it's easy to stand on, has really
Yeah.
good stability, it paddles well, it lifts off
Yeah.
the water. But then like sometimes the hard part is like, wow, on foil it's really funky. Its pitch is off, maybe its angle is off, or maybe the
Mm.
swing weight is a little bit too like influential in ways that you don't want it to be, or it
Yeah.
doesn't pump well, you
Yeah.
know? And that's a hard part. It's like, would you rather have a board that performs on the water, or
Mm.
a board that's maybe a little bit harder to get up, but now like when you're flying in the air, the quality of your ride is better.
Yeah.
And I guess for us too as athletes, in the beginning, a few years ago when we're learning, you know, I guess all the emphasis was on like I need to paddle up.
Yeah.
Um, and then now, as we're riding smaller, faster foils, I think we're gonna get a little bit more tuned in on how a board can feel really light and
Mm.
sensitive and very, um, yeah, very sharp when you're flying. You know.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what I've spent a lot of time on actually is like the weight distribution of a board being making sure it's balanced when it's up to pump because like you said, like it's great to get off the water and there's nothing slower than paddling, but if you're up there and you're struggling to pump it, it's horrible too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you've learned, as far as your quality of ride when you're on foil? I mean, I guess it's hard too, right? Because we're only maybe like a year or a year and a
Mm.
half deep into like really riding high aspect, small surface area foils. But what are some of the things that you're starting to log down in your noggin?
Yeah, like it's funny. I was kind of on a run recently actually, and like it's everyone kind of pushes that envelope, let's go higher and higher aspect. And like, I get it every time that we go higher aspect and I get to try it, it's better. But sometimes it's not better. And a run recently that I did on a lower aspect foil, it was way easier to stay at the height of the mast, really close to the surface of the water.
Yeah.
And I was able just to keep that foil flowing from bump to bump to bump way easier. And I did a back-to-back run on a higher aspect foil, and it was so hard to keep it high because it was choppy and it was crossed up, and it just was getting influenced by so many different bits of water that I had to ride really deep. And when I rode really deep, I was just genuinely slower.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say like what's better at the moment. Maybe there's a foil that's better in certain kind of conditions, and we have to pick between each foil at the conditions. But it's tough.
No, yeah, no, I think for sure. And we were all tripping when you were in France and we saw it might have been your water speed, and you had logged a 155 kilometer on the A10X, or we're like, whoa,
Oh yeah.
yeah. And I guess that's a whole debate too, and you
Yeah.
know, I guess even before we started chatting on the podcast, we were talking about James doing well on the 1075 in that race that they just had in the Northern Beaches or wherever it was.
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think I don't think choosing the smallest foil is always going to be the fastest foil
I
because
agree.
you know, yeah, like you said, if you're comfortable, you're fast. If you're
Yeah.
high on the mast, you're efficient, and if you're efficient, you're fast.
Yeah.
And in certain conditions, maybe in a bay run, um, you want something a little bit more mid aspect, or
Yeah.
and longer period, maybe high aspect, just to kind of retain that glide and speed. But man, there's
Totally.
still so much to learn. Um,
Yeah, and I feel like too, like especially like the bay runs that we had in, like I think you missed Crozon, but in Crozon, like it's much more of a bay run, and I feel like something that I've learned that is really important is if you're in a bay run, you're definitely faster than the bumps, so you don't want to be like 1.5 times faster than the bumps because you're just getting stuck every time you go over. You either
mhm.
want to be the same speed as the bumps, or you want to be 2 times faster than the bumps.
Yeah,
Because if you're 2 times faster than the bumps, you can just slip over and then slip over and then slip over. But
yeah.
if you're 1.5 times, you're kind of getting stuck each time you get over.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's a scenario where you either go like kind of match the bumps and you can be really efficient and just stay with it and then, do well. Or you try and get 2 times faster and you just have to pump and work over it all. But it's easier than being in between.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. What are some of your That's interesting because I've never really thought about it or framed it in that way where you want to be twice as fast, not 1.5 times as fast, or you want to match it. Go a little bit deeper into that and what you mean by that, or what's your process of choosing a wing for a race, say for example.
A wing for a race, yeah, that's super tricky. So I'd typically like to try the run out,
Yeah.
beforehand. Sometimes you don't get that opportunity, but if you can try that run out earlier and you can get a feel for what's possible and like the chip ins and what kind of rate the bumps are running, that's really important. And if you can, have a little bit of like data almost that like, so like say I'll take like a medium sized foil out and I'll go do the run and I'll
What's
push.
medium for you?
A medium size would probably be like 7 to 800 size, I'd say.
Hmm.
And
And what's
like
your
if you
what's your
get,
weight?
mine's like 88 at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if I take like that out and I like push and I feel how that felt and then I'll like go back to like efficiency and trying to sit on its stall speed and see what kind of like numbers I'll get out of that as well.
Hmm.
And then I'll go for something that's like the lowest effort speed I can on that foil. And I'll have like kind of like those feelings at those times in the run and the numbers that results that came out of those times. And I can kind of like add it all up and go, okay, what felt good? What foil should I ride to make it feel better next time?
Dang.
But if I don't get a chance to run in the conditions, like yeah, it's kind of a bit of
That was a
guesswork.
crapshoot, yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, let me ask you
Yeah.
this, man. Like, it sounds like you're super technical, and then like for for all the success that you have, like with racing, and like what inspired you? What inspires you about racing? You know, because it sounds like you come from a place where Victoria, and it's pretty isolated, and you know you,
Ooh,
you you can be
might have
very
lost you
busy
there.
with other things, right? Like winging, kite surfing, and surf. You got great waves. Um, for you, what was
Yeah.
it about downwinding and racing? Because it's pretty insane, and I'm still so stoked and like blown away, like how successful you are. Like, and don't. I hope I don't like. I'm not disrespecting you, but I'm just like you're like it's like the coolest underdog story. Like we're like, bro, this guy's freaking brilliant. and like you backed it up. You
Yeah,
backed.
I missed a little bit of that. I think the internet connection's dropping in and out a little bit.
Oh, I was gonna say like for you, um,
Yeah.
coming from a place like Victoria where you're isolated and you're maybe downwinding by yourself, or you were winging and kiting and surfing, or maybe just foil surfing and that. Like, what was it for you that inspired you for racing? And for me,
Yeah.
like for a lot of us, we're like, bro, this guy Jared is like legit, bro. He's like backing it up in France. He killed it in Hawaii, and it's such an interesting story to see what contributes to somebody
I
who.
think the internet's dropping in.
Oh man, my bad. Well, hopefully it's
That's all
okay.
good. But yeah, I think like like you know what's the drive to like do the racing? It's kind of funny. Like I typically don't like enjoy competing actually, but the race side of things, like I've always kind of believed that if the downwind
Yeah,
run
let me move.
calls for a certain type of riding, that you should
Right.
really aim for that. Like to go downwind in a fast run and go slow and surfy, I feel like that's a bit of a waste. And it's the same thing. Like if you go to Hood River and try and race, it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's the drive to like go fast and like keep up with the bumps is like the run that we get at home typically is super fast. So like we get a really long fetch ocean. We get like a crazy long fetch ocean swell, and then we get a really long fetch ocean wind, similar to you guys in Hawaii. And
Right.
in my opinion, to go out there and surf it on its cranking days is just a waste. So I'm just trying to keep up with the swell as much as I possibly can. And that's probably where it's influenced the race side of things because I just love keeping up with the ocean,
Hmm.
and that like fine tuning that skill is quite similar to trying to race everyone else, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
And
mean, like,
enable like us to go see different parts of the world, like France and Hawaii and stuff. If we can keep this rolling, like I'll happily go racing, But the competitive side of things, like I'm actually not that much of a competitor. Like when the gun goes and like the race starts, like yeah, I'm pretty competitive. But when we're on the beach, like I'm just there for a good time and get amongst everyone and get excited and do downwind runs outside of the event,
yeah.
all that sort of thing.
To me right now, that's the most exciting and best thing about foiling
Yeah,
is, you know, um, it's fun to be competitive, but right now, like, it's just a small, intimate group of like
yeah,
close friends, and like you said,
totally.
like during a race, it's fun to see somebody. It's not like you're like you see somebody, you're like, bro, I need to beat that guy, like.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe, but it's just like if you see somebody doing good, you're like stoked for them.
yeah,
And it's something, like I said, it's something unique. I think with foiling in general, maybe because the sport's so hard, and we know that people struggle, and so like we just have an instant respect for other
yeah.
downers, people who can downwind.
That's
Um,
such a good point. Yeah, like that struggle to learn this sport is instantly like that camaraderie. Like, oh wow, we can all do this one thing that's so hard. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, internet cut out, but it's okay. Um,
You're
but
good.
yeah, and to me, like that was my favorite thing about traveling and going to France. And France is awesome, and it's
Yeah,
just everyone's so cool, everyone's so stoked, and really like going to all those races. It's just a fun catch up to see all your buddies and all your friends online, and just like we were just in Hawaii, or now we're in France, and it
yeah,
almost it's like a cool like little family reunion, all the good times,
totally. Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, I'm actually
yeah, I
super
love
bummed I missed out on Curzon. Curzon is beautiful and is like one of my favorite like places as far as scenery in France, and I know it can get super dramatic with the winds and stuff, but every year that I've gone, it's been like, um, you know, we missed the window, but um, Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't we talk about France and what that was like for you? Was that your first time in France? And you, obviously you did well in the
Yeah, that was
races,
my first time to
but
Europe in general, so
tell me some
pretty
of your
hectic.
favorite things about France and both spots.
Sure. Yeah, so like France was the first time that I went to Europe ever, so that was really really cool. And like I've got to say that going down to the south of France and the Mediterranean was by far my favorite part. Like
It's
the
beautiful.
conditions that those guys get in the Med is seriously good. It's like crazy fast bumps, but zero effort. It's all kind of like stacked up like a bay run, but it's got a lot more size and a lot more speed. And the water's really nice, and the coastline's really epic. So, south of France, Mediterranean, probably the highlight of the trip. And then Saint Tropez and that whole event was ran so well with all the boats. Fred doing an epic job. The flat water racing and the dock starting was something that I was not really like keen on. And then once I got there and I actually did it, man, it was so sick. Like
Yeah.
the dock start was so much fun. All the buddies are hanging around on the dock. You're falling in, learning how to do it on the day of the event. It's like so much fun to do it. And same with the flat water race. Like it's so much fun just being around everyone and seeing a little bit of action when there's no wind or nothing else to do. So that was really cool. I actually think that adding on to downwind events, some dock starting, some flat water racing is pretty sick idea.
Hmm. It
And
it's
then the
super.
Cruzon event was a similar thing. Like,
Oh, go ahead. Finish
yeah.
up.
Yeah, like the Curzon
Yeah,
stuff was
I
really
was gonna
similar
say,
too. Like adding in that surf event was epic to see.
downwinding is still like
Yeah,
not a super spectator friendly sport, so it's super cool to see the
yeah,
dock start and the flat water start and kind of and like you said, it's kind of like a sneaky, like interesting and fun thing to the athletes for us who like maybe aren't super enthusiastic about like, bro, I don't want to do a flat water race or a dock start race. I want to just downwind, but
yeah, yeah.
it's really fun.
Totally. Yeah, it blew my mind how fun it was. Like I had a few people tell me before it started, like, look, it's gonna be fun, just do it. And I was kind of like, oh, how could dock starting be that fun? But seriously, it is so much fun. Like I was blown away by the whole event. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, they killed it. And then yeah, in Curzon, so tell us about Curzon and what the waters were like up there, and
Yeah.
we all saw that nuclear forecast and that video for the day after the race and how it was bombing. Run us through that.
Yeah, so that Cruzon day was, epic. We had like this run up near Brest and it was bombing, tight against bumps, and it was just crazy good. So Jacko and Guybridge, Emma, myself, my brother, it was crazy good. Ben Wild, big shout out to him. He showed us where to go and where to, enter the water safely and exit the water safely because that day was pretty hectic.
Yeah, I
But
can only
yeah,
imagine if it's that windy, the shore break and the entries and exits are just
oh yeah,
bombing waves, and you can't duck dive or
absolutely.
mix up or anything. Yeah, that must have been heavy. And it's a from whenever I've gone to Curzon, it's actually and I'm from Hawaii, but it's a very like intimidating
Yeah,
coastline. Very intimidating. It's like dark, it's ominous,
yeah.
it's cliffy, and it's real ocean.
Totally. Real ocean. Yeah, that's a good description for sure. And like, yeah, I feel like the runs that they can produce for a race day is really good, like they've got that really gnarly side of their coast, but they can bring it a little bit inside the bay and it works great. Like they've got good logistics for that and then they've still got that raw untamed side of it that keeps the competitors happy. So I think it's good.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny, for us being in Hawaii,
Yeah.
like we just think that this is like the best possible conditions for downwinding, but man, and that's what I love about traveling is I take one trip to France and I'm like, nope, Hawaii is not the best place in the world for downwinding, and I haven't
Yeah.
even downwinded in Hieres where you guys
Yeah.
were climbing those runs. I can't even
Oh man.
imagine. I can't even
That
fathom.
run that you guys did though, that would look really sick. with Mario. That one looked insane.
Yeah, yeah, it was really good. But
Man,
yeah, it blew my mind. And I've never been in the ocean with that much energy and power. And it's crazy, you know? Yeah.
yeah,
You just got to pinch yourself like, bro, I'm downwinding in Spain or in France, you know? And then, what's funny is when I was growing up as a canoe paddler, all the Aussie guys would come over and they would love downwinding or doing runs in Hawaii. And they said, Australia's junk. And like, so
mm,
like this whole time I had this in the back of my head that, Australia doesn't have good bumps or doesn't have good wind. But man,
yeah.
from what it sounds like from you and Victoria, and you got that long period ocean swell and that long period wind fetch, it sounds like a great place to downwind.
Oh, sorry, I might have missed that one.
Oh, I was saying it's
Into
like
that again.
for us, like when I was growing up in canoe paddling, a bunch of my whenever the Australians would come over and race, we'd kind of
Yeah,
like share stories about how they loved the bumps here in Hawaii, and they were saying that back home there's not as much energy or the bumps aren't as good, and so
yeah,
this whole time I'm just thinking, yeah, Australia doesn't have good bumps, but from your perspective and you describing what it's like downwinding in Victoria, and then for me seeing like a bunch of Jeff's old videos and it's ripping wind and you got the long period swell and the long period wind fetch, it sounds like it's
yeah.
a cycle place to downwind, you know?
Totally. And like, Hawaii is so consistent and so like it's so great for training like that. Like how the wind's always a similar direction and the swell's always similar direction like that. Like we don't have that as much, but when it is good and when it does line up really well, like it is epic and it's really, really fun. But I think in terms of like a trip, when you go to Hawaii, like you're pretty much guaranteed to get something. But if you did a trip to Australia, like, yeah, it's up in the air if you'll get something good. Like, WA is different, but down here where we're from, it's like you kind of have to spend a long time to get good stuff.
Yeah.
But when it does come, it's really good.
Wow, that's crazy. So
Yeah,
like so for you and your learning curve, I mean, because we all know like it takes a lot of dedication and time on the water and a lot
for
of
sure.
sessions in order to downwind. And consistency is key, you know. Damn, I'm just imagining for you, like learning in those limited opportunities must have been tough, you know.
Yeah, man, super tough, and especially trying to train is really tough too. So like, I find myself, especially training, I find myself doing runs that are just like not good. They'll be offshore, or it'll be onshore, or it'll be too light, it'll be against the swell. Like, there's so many things that are wrong with the run, but I think that's so good, especially for this downwind world tour. Like,
Yeah,
if it's gonna become like an actual thing, events have to run within that window. So to run that event in that window, you're most likely gonna have to do it in something that's not optimal. And to train in subpar like conditions, it's really good to get that experience, I guess.
yeah,
But for learning terms of things, it's really not the best way to learn, I don't think. And we were kind of lucky because we kind of short circuited with a few different trips that we had, and we kind of had a good summer when I was learning. So yeah, it's definitely tricky to learn, but it's a good place to train.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I think there's so much lessons to learn when you go out in different conditions all the time and even
Mm,
poor conditions. And that's kind of one of the I want to say it's a drawback of Hawaii because Hawaii is so consistent all the time that
yeah,
when the conditions are poor, like nobody likes to go because it's just like
yeah,
like it's whereas like if you're like sitting around for weeks and you got like a little
yeah,
bit of wind, you're like I gotta go,
yeah, yeah.
and it's good, and here so like here we are, for me and a couple of my buddies that we train with, it's backwards now, like where we look forward to like the junk days because it's like a fun challenge, but it you know
Yeah,
it took all those years of building up a sensitivity to riding and foiling and learning how to be efficient rather
Yeah.
than just, gassing out and stuff, and
Yeah, that's sick. Like learning to go out when it's bad and wanting to go out when it's bad, and like that challenge is something that I've like grown to love. And yeah, like figuring out how to make it easy when it's not easy is something that I think is really cool.
yeah, yeah. And it's the best time to do it because, we got good boards and design has come a
Yeah,
long way and the foils are so much better and it's more accessible to, downwind and ride anywhere, I
for
think
sure.
I think if I were to say to myself that I would have um, wanted to race or thought it was possible to race in Saint Tropez, um, like a few years ago, I'd be like, "There's no way. I don't think I can make it."
Yeah,
Um, as far as like a technical pop up and what the bumps were like
for
and all
sure.
that. But it's good, and it's a good challenge. And yeah, like you said, for the world tour, it's not firing every day, but
Yeah,
that's what makes the sport interesting, and that's what's going to push the sport even more is for the downwind athletes to be able to perform in all conditions, um,
yeah,
and being able to choose the right wings and the right gear. Um,
yeah,
that's a huge sleeper. I think that a lot of people can overlook, um, and yeah, just it's gonna push us in the right direction. And I think each year, and for me, like I've been racing a long time with canoe paddling, and canoe paddling was easy to learn how to train, right? Like you just get your cardio up, go into the weight room, and build up your back and your muscles and your core, right? So you can paddle
yeah,
stronger. And foiling is half half, where you can be a uh, very talented and technical foiler, like a Kane, right? And I
mm,
don't. There's no disrespect here because I don't want to say Kane's not an athlete, but he's not. He's
mm,
not an athletic beast like Edo. Like Edo's like six pack and he's yoked
yeah,
and he's like just a machine. And it's
totally.
cool. It's cool to see two of the sport's best.
Yeah,
Um, and they got to the top of the mountain on different paths, and
yeah, it's sick.
like Kane's relying on his skills and his knowledge, and Edo too, but Edo's kind of more of like he trains hard, and he prepares his body and whatnot, So for us, I think each year, you know, my especially for me, my training is morphing and evolving all the time. Like what are
Yeah,
some for you, and it's crazy, and I say this over and over, as far as your success when racing, like, do you do any training or is it more just time on water for you and just having a heightened sense of sensibility or sensation
yeah.
on the water?
I guess like naturally, I guess I think I've built up more towards the side of like the skiller side. Like I'm not typically that fit, to be honest. Like comparing myself to like Kai Thompson, Kai
Yeah,
Thompson's very, very fit,
fit.
and I
Yeah,
think he does a really good job at maintaining that, and he builds the skills as well, and he's killing it. So
yeah.
I think I've probably lent myself more towards the skill side of things, and probably should do a lot more work on the fitness side of things.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like my typical training, I guess, is just doing it a lot. Like I try and do like a downwind run probably once a day.
Yeah.
And if I miss that, it'll probably be like a surf session. And if I miss that entirely, like it'll be something at home, like a bike ride or something. But it's always something. It always has to be one thing a day. So yeah, that's usually the training program so far. And I think, yeah, downwind foiling, I think there's no replacement for it. You kind of just got to do the downwind foiling, and you gotta learn that skill, and you gotta flex that muscle, and then the fitness comes alongside it too. So It's a good one to do the training on. It's just downwind.
For sure, for sure. It's you can ask a question to a surfer too, right? It's like, how do you get better at
Yeah,
surfing? Are you going to spend time out in the lineup and surfing, or do you get better on land? And
totally.
I don't say you get better, but you definitely help your body stay in form and stay in shape so that you can perform in the water. You know, um, I think with foiling, I mean, for me, like I'm 36 years old, and for me, like I want to commit to training and cross training so I can foil better and foil longer and kind of like
Yeah,
avoid injury. Because it's foiling's like a weird sport and it's very asymmetrical on our bodies, and
yeah,
you know, I, you know, I come across back pain every once in a while, sometimes knee pain. So
yeah,
for me, the cross training is just to keep the body in shape and in form, you know.
for sure. And I think that's a good thing too. Like too much of one thing is a bad thing. I think too. Like you kind of get locked up, like you said. Like asymmetry on the paddle ups, especially, is pretty bad. And yeah, I think you got to do something else. Definitely.
Front leg, back leg, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
All right, man. So give me your best pitch for pair winging. I saw that you've been pair winging a little bit.
Best pitch for powering. I think Hood River is the only way that you can really sell it. If you're gonna go to Hood River, man, you don't want to be doing anything else. Like
Hmm.
getting on that smaller board, I don't know, it was another thing that I was kind of resistant to it, to be honest. Like I liked the powering, but I just didn't see the vision. Like I was kind of like, these lines are annoying. This powering bag's annoying. You got to stow it and all this sort of stuff. And then I got to Hood River, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like it is unbelievable how much better it is being on that smaller board, and you can just rip the whole way down the river, and if you fall off, you're straight back up with the powering. But the best thing in that river is you can get upwind quicker than people driving. So people are driving along, and you can upwind the powering and beat them to the top, and then just go straight downwind again.
Yeah. You can
So that
stay
aspect
in
of
the
it,
zone,
yeah, just laps, and you can stay in that best zone of the river too. You don't really have to, do that start from tunnel four where it's quite small.
yeah.
But the biggest selling point I think is when there's an onshore wind for places like where I live where it's quite fickle. I
Yeah.
think the onshore wind, people talk about getting better lines and stuff, but it's not really worked for me. I think the best thing that we can do is when it's dead onshore, you just get the power wing out, you upwind as far as you want to go, you stow it, and you just downwind right back to beach. And there's literally nothing you'd want to do anyway because it's just like 20 knots onshore, the surf's bad, the downwinding's bad, and power wing's really your only option.
Really.
So, yeah.
So the one thing that kind of been curious about, and I'm sure you are now too, because you're a shaper and you design things. It's like, okay, um, obviously the benefit is riding and downwinding a small board. Have
Yeah.
you started like shaping like really, I wouldn't say extremely small boards, but like boards that are smaller than your daily driver? Like how big is your race board, your downwind board?
So my downwind board's like 105 and it's about 8'3" and a half actually, 16 and a half wide.
Actually kind of small for you too, yeah?
Yeah, that's kind of small for me. It probably should be a bit bigger, but I feel like if you learn how to get them up, you win the reward once it's up. When
When
it's
you're up.
up, you pump a less of a board, you got less swing weight, and you can pump better. So it's always a trade-off in foiling in every way. So you can't have everything, and I think the best trade-off is to have a good paddle up board, but a better pumping board when it's up.
When it's up, yeah.
But for down, like for the powerwing side of things, I've been playing with it heaps, and like it's really specific on where you're at. If you're at Hood River and you got 30 knots and you know it's not going to drop off, you can go pretty small. Like you can run like for my weight, you can run like 40, 50 liters very comfortably and it's fine.
Mhm.
But if you're at home here and the wind's potentially going to drop off without any warning at all, like you're typically riding something bigger. So I've found like a lot of success on like the 60, 65 liter boards. And even if you just want to get a session in, like an 80 liter wingboard is actually really good. So I feel like having a quiver of parrowing boards is it's almost necessary, like almost having two. But you know, it depends on where you're at and what you're doing, basically.
Have you thought about making like a miniature SUP board for downwinding
Yeah,
with board?
I have. I've actually been really quite inspired by Reedy in Perth. Like I
Yeah.
think he's killing it with the boards he's making, and like yeah, I think it'd be really sick making something that's a body weight sup. I think that's probably where I'm gonna go. Like around the 85 liters for me, a little bit under my body weight, and just like short and small and really light and something real surfy.
Dude, that guy's gnarly because like not only does he pop it up in the bump, but he's like flat watering small
Yeah.
wing on
And it's like
his.
short board too, man. Like it's like I think it's even under 6 foot. I don't know. It's tiny.
That's crazy. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's an animal. Like if people don't truly know how hard that is, you know?
Oh,
I don't think because yeah, it's
so
hard.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially that 600 too from Code. It's so small.
yeah, yeah. So, and I've asked a bunch of the code writers here. Do you still take out your R's? Like
Yeah, I
I know
still
you
think.
guys have the S's to surf, and like that's gonna be fun to downwind,
Yeah.
or surf foil. And everyone's been loving the RXs, right? The new high aspect ones.
Yeah.
Uh, and they're just like, like I would just rather take that. Like for example, for me, I ride F1. The momentums are more for like the long period. I want to have a
Yeah.
good average speed, but if I want, I'll still use the X daily, which is kind
Yeah.
of similar to like what the R and the RX is, but it seems
Totally.
like RXs are a little bit maybe like it. I wouldn't say it's replacing the R, but it's you would lean to ride that more often than the R's.
Sure, yeah. I'm not sure that that foil's like actually done yet. It's still in the prototype phase. I'm not sure if we can talk about it publicly, but yeah, like the S's and the R's are still super relevant. Like I used that S on that run the other day, that mid aspect foil, like mid aspect 9.5. So I was using that foil, an 850S, and comparing it against something that's a lot higher aspect, and I still get better numbers out of it. If you can ride it in a way and in a particular type of bump, you can still get heaps out of it. But the R's in particular, like I find for my weight, I have to ride them quite small, like 600 or 680 or something, to get the most out of them for what I'm chasing.
Right.
Unless it's something like what James is doing, and the 1250 and the 1075 and the 960R, you can't replace those foils in wind when it's like well, they literally did a run where it was a headwind, and you
Uh,
can't really replace doing anything on that. Like if you try and take out a massive foil that's low aspect and pump it for a long time, you just won't go anywhere.
yeah. You'll
So.
burn your legs not way sooner, and it's gonna be way gnarlier.
Totally. Yeah. But for me personally, like I find like I know like James has had heaps of success with like the 860R and all that, and I find like it's a really, really good cruisy foil. But to race on it, I find that it's kind of in that mid range, like kind of what I was talking about before, where it's like a little bit faster than the bumps, but not fast enough. So I
Hmm.
find that I have more success running like the small stuff, so I can go well over the bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of one of the things I've learned this year riding. My for me the 600 momentum
Sick.
is it's actually less strain on your legs and your body because
Totally.
you don't have so much foil pushing on you, and it's just a little bit. You got to be a little bit more fast twitch, and your lungs have to be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you were to ride something in the middle or just not match the conditions
Yeah.
correctly, if you ride a bigger wing, it would actually be a lot more tiring. Or yeah, just like you
Totally
said,
agree.
right in
Yeah.
that, you know. Um, I guess the other thing that's cool for you guys too is like, and for me, what we have, new tails, and then it's fun to take those new tails and then bring it back. Like, I imagine the 110 tail for you guys on the S's could be sick, and just different
Oh
and
yeah.
give life to it. Like
Totally. Yeah, we love playing around with different tails. For sure. Do you guys play around with tails to optimize downwinding as well?
Yeah, man, it's funny if you know me, like I
Yeah,
pretty much never downwind the same setup back to back. I'm always
sick.
changing.
I love
I'm always
that.
changing something, like a
Yeah,
different fuselage length, a different tail, maybe a shim in the tail.
yeah,
And it's like I have like yeah, some people love to just buckle in and just don't change anything, and for me, I have
yeah.
FOMO when I don't change something because I'm like, because
I could have
you know,
known. Yeah,
even
it's
the
like the
conditions,
what if.
yeah. You know,
Yeah,
and even when the conditions are smaller or different or bigger, you're like, well, I haven't tried it in this size bump, you know, with all these variables, and it's for me, it's endless. I love feeling new sensations all the time. I'm constantly changing things,
same.
changing mass placements, everything. It's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, that's sick. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's and to me that's that's what's bizarre is as high level as we can be in downwind foiling and 4, 5, 6 years down the road, it's still being excited about your setup, the
Yeah,
possibilities and the potential of your setup, and then the possibilities and the potentials of the different runs that you do because everywhere around the world is
yeah,
so different.
totally. Yeah, and it's like chasing that feeling too. Like you keep getting those moments of just like effortless speed and you connect every single dot and you like kind of perfect run scenario, and you kind of go like, oh, how can I replicate that again? Like I want to do it every time.
Yeah, yeah. So what's next for you? Are you gonna so the race is in November. That's
Yeah.
the is that in West Oz or is where the next stop on tour?
Ooh, just dropped out again. Sorry, what was that?
The next stop on tour, where is that in West Oz for you guys?
Yeah, so that's in WA, and then that's coming up really soon, actually. So yeah, I think it's starting around about the 20th. Be really keen to get over there and do some races. I've actually never been to WA, so I'm super keen to get over and like meet a whole bunch of crew that I've been messaging on Instagram, and like put a face to the name, and then I really really want to go down south and do some like big runs down near Mugs and just experience what WA has to offer, really.
Yeah, yeah. What's
So
how are you preparing or are you preparing or yeah, what is your routine like leading up to these races?
yeah, so basically what I try and do is I try just to get comfortable being underfoiled basically before a race. So I'll take out foils that shouldn't go in those conditions and just try and get comfortable. And try and figure out a way to be, yeah, like basically just comfortable and like try and find a way to be efficient, try and find a way to stay high and not, you know, it's really quite hard to find the spot where those small foils are happy in bumps that are slow. And if you
Mm,
can do that and you can find those opportunities and go quick on them, I feel like it lends itself really well to going to a foil that's a little bit bigger, but it suits the conditions because you know how to push and you know how to save and you know how to like time it. So that's basically what I do in the lead up to an event. I just try and ride smaller foils than what I should be riding and basically know that I can get it up in a condition or know that I can pump it in a certain situation and have that confidence. Because if I'm scared of a foil, it's kind of like that skating thing. I'm not sure if you ever skated, but like if you ever skated and you fall on something and you don't try that trick that same session, the next session that you go back, you're like, oh, I don't want to try that trick. But if you go do that in foiling, it's the same thing. You don't want to be scared of a foil. Like you want to get that like monkey off your back kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. And I think when people actually dive into this whole downwinding thing, they realize that it's probably, and especially in racing, right? Because
Yeah.
racing, all the anxieties and
Yeah.
come in, and it's you want to perform, and this sport is crazy how influential it is with your mentality and your mind and stuff.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy. Awesome, man. Well, hey, um, good luck in WA,
Thanks, man.
rooting for you.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
it's cool to see this world tour thing take off. And I just hope that it's a great opportunity for all the athletes and all the people racing, and just to have fun and just kind of continue to see the sport grow. You know,
Absolutely.
um, I hope, I hope, and I know they will, because it seems like a really good team of guys, and I hope Code takes good care of you as far as sending you to places to go downwind all the time for the races and the world tour. Um, any last words before we sign off?
No, just thanks for having me on, and hope you get some wind and some waves and some water time, and yeah, hopefully catch up soon.
For sure. And yeah, next time you come to Hawaii, spend some time on Oahu, and we'll do. I look forward to doing a bunch of runs with you and your brother and the whole crew.
Absolutely. Hell yeah.
All right, cheers, mate. Appreciate the time,
Thanks,
and
mate.
best of luck in the northern beaches. No, what's it in West Haas? West.
WA. Yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Cheers.